let's get started. Thank you everyone for coming. And we have first request for tonight. This is the zoning board, ZBA committee. I'm assuming you all know that. The first thing on our first hearing, we have a variance request from 23 Westboro Road. Jennifer, Jennifer, you're here? Okay, well, excellent. Jennifer, you want to just come up and speak to the board? Tell us what you're hoping to do. We're very informal.
Sure.
Absolutely. We do say we try to project your voice a little bit so that the people at home can hear you too.
Sure. Use my teacher voice. Thank you for your time and consideration. Should I hand these off to you?
Right, yeah.
And then also additional copies. Thanks. So thank you for your time and consideration. My husband and I just bought our home at 23 Upton Road. We're excited to set roots in Upton. So today we're just requesting a variance. We would like to install an in-ground pool on our property on the north side. We've consulted a pool contractor, a surveyor and landscape architect to identify like the best location on the property to install an in-ground pool. We're somewhat limited on placement with code and setback requirements. We do have a septic, a leach field. We have existing property, including a barn and a paddock area. And off our driveway, there is a retaining wall. So again, we like to install the pool on the north side of the property. It's the best location for it. It's about 29.7 feet off of the street and then 18.2 feet off of the abutting property on the north side. We don't foresee any reason why it would disrupt the character of the neighborhood or the home itself. And so we're hoping that we can get it approved tonight. End argument. Yes, sir.
The strip of property to the north doesn't even have a lot number. So what is it?
The property to the north.
Yes, you're.
I believe it's the church has a strip of land between ourselves and our neighbors on Upton on Westboro Road.
Yep. The church does?
The church does, yes. It's a very skinny strip.
Sure. What does it look like? Is it undeveloped land? What?
It is undeveloped land. It is like, I want to say maybe 10 feet wide, maybe a little bit more than that. And then Kelly on the neighboring property has some barns and sheds kind of right against the property line there.
Okay.
Looks like some kind of easement.
It does walk right down to the electrical lines.
Oh, all right.
And
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
owned by Emmanuel Chapel.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. On the plan that you provided, I was just curious, the dimension of the pool that's shown, the 18 by 36 feet, does that include the deck around the pool? Or is that just the in-ground pool and there will be an additional skirt around?
That's
that?
correct. It's just the in-ground pool and there'll be some stamped concrete hopefully around it.
So do they need, Mike, do they need relief for the concrete apron around the pool as well? Because I think.
No, I think it's just the
Just the
walls.
Yeah. Weirdly, if you build a deck, you need it, but not if it's paving.
Strange.
It is strange because considering landscaping,
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
it's a weird quirk of the law.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming this is going in the area, I'm looking at the street view on Google here, about where the table is outside in the backyard there off that porch.
Yes, I don't have it in front of me, but there's like a tree there.
A couple trees.
Yes.
And I can see where that would be an appropriate place for where the placement of the pool. I'm gonna open it to the board first, and I want to make sure anyone who has any questions can fire away,
No more.
because and then that's fine. Any questions down here? Is there any abutters or neighbors? Because we always like to hear from the neighbors that have any concerns. They don't show up.
Today.
Do you have any questions, concerns, comments? Because we always like
I'm the abutting to the east.
the east. Oh, the other way. Okay.
Yeah, it was my understanding that easement is actually an old carriage road.
Oh, that makes why it's so narrow.
It might even been I thought maybe I heard it was the Boston Worcester carriage, but it doesn't make sense. But anyway, it apparently was a carriage at the time in their house. It's kind of like a farmhouse. Might have even been an inn.
Very large cruiser.
It looks like you have access to get trucks in there.
Yes.
Not crossing over the septic, but that's good.
Yeah.
You're gonna jump the fence and get a dip there.
Maybe.
Every once in a while.
Yes.
I think Martha has her hand raised on the screen here.
Mike, can you,
Yeah, it's like she said, you're, Martha, you appear to be unmuted, so go ahead.
Hi, so my name is Martha Burns, and I'm the prior owner of 23 Westboro Road.
Yeah.
And we lived there for 15 years. And we also currently own James Road, 11 James Road across the way. So the only thing I was going to comment on is that the old cart path that runs between 23 Westboro Road and 27 Westboro Road, it is a very old cart path. It goes well back to the 1850s. And yes, it's still apparently owned by the church. So I don't know if that is going to play into anything. As far as I can see, it's pretty much been abandoned.
okay. Are there any other concerns brought forth by the neighbors or? Okay, I don't have any myself. I think it's a good sign when the neighbors don't show up, and if it, an abandoned road, I don't see the church using that anytime soon, so that it kind of would be like, it used to be when you abandoned the road, the property owners on either side would split the road down the middle and each got half. That's the old tradition, and I think it's a rooted in law too.
Yeah.
Um,
Depending on how it's used.
yeah, yes, sir.
Just as a comment, the neighbor to the north, Ed, once lived there, and he fought for that property, as I understood it, as you were noting.
Yeah.
If it's not used, the person that has no barrier can claim that property up to a barrier, and that barrier happens to be my property. So it's my understanding that now Kelly would have owned that property.
Yeah.
Instead of the church, but
Yeah, there's just some strange things, like if you fence it or and maintain it for 10 years, it's adverse possession.
I know Ed's invited, I thought he had one access rights.
Yeah. Well, here nor there, this is more about the pool.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
a point of clarification. The cart path we're talking about, is it outlined here in relation to the, I guess I'll refer to as the church's property?
Yeah.
That skinny, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If you look,
So that's
yeah.
not the applicant's
Yeah.
property. And
Yeah. So it's irrelevant to this,
Yeah.
yes.
here you can see on the survey provided, that strip is shown as owned in fee simple. I would.
But they would have been notified,
Yeah.
Yes.
notified all
Does this-
And if they had a concern with it,
So
they'd
that
be here.
appears to be
You know, when
right.
people are really
but-
concerned, that's gonna
I
happen.
just wanted to make sure we weren't talking about an easement stuff.
Yeah,
Through
no.
where
In the middle.
pool was
Yeah.
proposed, but doesn't seem like that's the case.
So
Um,
just developed.
Well, if there's no more questions from the board members, I'll take a
Just a practical matter.
Yeah.
I think you have to file this plot plan with your variance at the registry and you have to be able to use this. Because it says right on it, it's been prepared, the plan has not been prepared for recording purposes.
Okay, I can go back to them.
You might want to get something redone before you go to the registry.
Thank you.
The document that we submit, that Mike's gonna write, will be by itself sufficient for you to register. You don't actually, you won't have to have that. What Mike's gonna write will take care of you.
The
Um,
document itself.
But it's extremely important that you take the variance and bring it to the Registry of Deeds up in Worcester. He'll help you with all that and tell you what to do. They do charge you to register it, but it's very important that you do register it and it becomes part of your property.
Thank you.
Sorry for that.
Should you, should you get the board to agree? Let's see. Mike, you haven't been here in a while. How about we give you the option of making the motion here? Here's the agenda, just read it right off the top of that.
Remove that the variance application for 23 Westboro Road, for permission to construct an in-ground pool with associated retaining walls and other improvements within the required minimum front side yard setbacks on a property located in the AR zoning district be approved.
Second. Okay, all vote in favor. I think you're the voting member tonight.
That's what I, yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, there we go. All right, we're all here, so we actually have. Here we
Thank
go.
you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for everyone for showing up, because anytime with 40 Bs, you know how that gets moved, boy. All right, so now the main meal here. We're opening up another evening of the comprehensive permit application for 45 Milford Street. They're looking for a 40B 27 unit townhouse. And I think you're it for tonight. So we designated it that tonight's chunk would be the traffic. And I'm assuming you're going to present that. And we also have our peer review from Stantec, who will. It's done. So you want to give your presentation first, sir?
Yes, yeah. Vanessa's here to replace what happened with the developers. So thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For the record, my name is Jeffrey Dirk. I'm the managing partner with Vanessa and Associates, and we're the transportation consultants on the project, and glad to be before you again on this project. So I don't, do you have the presentation queued up?
Yeah,
Okay.
this is what you're using?
It is, yes. Are you going to drive it for me or? Yeah. Okay, that's perfect. Yeah, it's not. So thank you. So just by way of kind of an overview of the transportation analysis that we prepared, I do appreciate the fact that we've had the benefit of a peer review, and I know your peer reviewers here, and I also see the him online as well. So that's always beneficial to see that before we come and present to you, so that anything I need to update, I can update it. So I'm presenting to you the latest information. The nice thing as it relates to the peer review is that there were no technical issues relative to the analysis that we've undertaken. There were some items related to the site plan that we'll be cleaning up. I'll talk a little bit about those items, but I think you'll kind of go through that in a subsequent hearing. So in terms of the assessment itself, and these are some of the things that your peer reviewer always checks on, is first to make sure that we've conducted it in accordance with industry standards, but also the state standards. And so the Department of Transportation sets those standards that we need to follow in conducting the impact assessment. The project's on Route 140, which state highway, and so that's also relevant as it relates to how we undertake the analysis. So it's a transportation assessment. So as we're conducting our analysis, we're looking at not just motor vehicles, but pedestrians, bicycles, and safety of all of those modes of transportation as well as a part of the evaluation. As we look at the impact of the project, as I think you've heard, 27 units, it doesn't produce a large volume of traffic. So Route 140 today accommodates somewhere around just a little less than 6,000 vehicles per day during the peak hours. So when people are going to work in the morning or coming home in the evening, the roadway has somewhere between about 630 and 730 vehicles on that roadway. This project will add about 13 to 14 vehicle trips during those peak hours. So that's how much traffic we're going to be adding to the existing roadway volumes, which again are somewhere between 625 and 730 vehicles. So as we look at the addition of that traffic to the roadway, what we measure in terms of impacts is the delay at intersections. So how long do I wait at a stop sign at Brook Street if I'm trying to make a left-hand turn or right-hand turn before and after the project's traffic is added. We also look at backup. So if you're trying to make a left-hand turn and there's a lot of traffic on 140, you got to wait and there's cars that back up behind you. So we look at that backup before and after the project's traffic, and then any changes in that tells us that there's an impact and we can quantify that. So as we look at the impacts at the intersections, as it relates to the project, what we saw was that the delays at any intersection didn't go up by more than, it was less than 2 seconds. on average over the course of an hour. And those backups didn't go up by more than one vehicle. So the project wasn't found to be significantly impactful on the roadway network. So pretty much what you see is operating conditions today. Without the project, they're going to be similar to what you'll see with the project, just because it's not producing a large volume of traffic based on the number of units that are proposed. Can you just go to the next slide? Thanks. As I mentioned, we look at safety on the roadway network. So safety is looking at motor vehicle crash history along Route 140 and at the specific intersections, and I'll talk about those intersections in a minute. We look at 5 years worth of crash data because that will tell us if there's any significance in terms of the number of crashes that are happening at the intersections in relation to the volume of traffic going through the intersections. So as we look at that criteria, the number of crashes that are happening at the intersections, there are crashes, but the number of crashes is not disproportionate to what would be expected based on the volume of traffic. So the crash rates is what we look at. And the Department of Transportation publishes crash rates for the town of Upton and this region of the state. And we can look at those crash statistics and compare them to the averages. All of the intersections had a crash rate that was below what would be expected at these intersections based on the volume. So no significant trends in terms of crash histories, which is a good thing. If there was a crash history at an intersection, you always want to address that before you add any more traffic, because obviously there's an issue needs to be addressed. You wouldn't want to add traffic to an unsafe situation. So the good thing here is that we don't have any unsafe situations. There's another metric that we look at, and it's not just the number of crashes, but it's the severity. So you can have an intersection that doesn't have a large number of crashes, but if there's a lot of personal injury crashes or a fatality, sometimes that is also an indicator of a location that has a crash history that needs to be addressed. There's no high crash locations either as it relates to severity of crashes. Again, so looking at those two prongs in terms of safety, that were any safety issues. The last parameter in terms of safety that we evaluate is sight lines of the driveway. And this is one of the things that your peer reviewer focused in on as well. So what we're going to show you later on in the presentation is the sight triangles of the driveway. So we looked at the distance that you can see if you're exiting the property, looking to the left or right, and compare that to what is required based on the speed of traffic approaching the intersection. So it's not a posted speed limit, it's the speed that people are actually driving. So the posted speed limit, it's 45 miles an hour. We assess the sight lines based on 50 miles an hour. And one of the reasons we do that is it's typically you do 5 miles an hour above the posted speed limit. But I think as you all know, kind of experiencing what's been going on with the construction activity, brand new pavement surface, brand new signs, and brand new pavement markings as well. Sometimes, at least in the interim, when you've got a better pavement surface, absent any other intervening measures, speeds can go up slightly. They don't generally go up significantly unless you cut all the trees down and widen the road, do things like that. So we don't expect there's going to be a significant change. But between when we measure the speeds, which were closer to the posted speed limit, and I think what you're going to see when they get all done and the road is finished, probably will be above that speed limit, generally the 5 miles an hour. So that's why we assessed it based on 50 miles an hour. So based on 50 miles an hour, you have to be able to see a minimum distance of 425 feet. We measured and assessed that you could see more than 500 feet. One of the caveats of that, and I know you might have done a site visit, is that there's a lot of good vegetation right along the frontage of where the property is located. So as they construct the project, there will be the need to trim some of that vegetation and maintain it. The reason that your peer reviewer asked that we prepare this site triangle plan is so we can demonstrate to you, and it will be shown in site plans, that clearing either occurs within the site or in the state right of way. So that's one of the situations where the applicant can undertake that work with your permission and then getting a permit from the state, which they will do as a part of their driveway permit. So I'll show you that plan in a minute. That will also be on the site plan. So when you get to the point of, hopefully endorsing a set of plans, that will be on those drawings. So it's kind of run with the property as well, but that's an area that needs to be cleared. Next slide. A little bit quicker through some of these. I'm going to skip the editorialized block there. I'll let your peer reviewer speak to the fact of just basically pointing out there's no technical issues found with respect to the analysis or the things I've just mentioned to you tonight. So this slide here just shows that study area that we looked at. So the project site is basically between Brook Street and the Prospect Street intersection. So we looked at those two intersections. Typically, you look at one intersection on either side of the project, just so you can see vehicles turn left or right or coming from north, south. They're going to go through these two intersections. So that's why you want to capture it and measure what the impact would be at those locations. So that's essentially our study area. The one thing I wanted to point out also when you look at the slide here is you see this little orange dashed line. That's where there's a sidewalk. So we have a situation here, at least in terms of the standpoint of looking at, bikeability or walkability, looking at those other modes of transportation. We don't have good connectivity to sidewalks. Route 140 is wide enough that you can ride a bike in a shared travel way type of configuration. And I think when, again, the road gets resurfaced, which will extend up to the Brook Street intersection, it'll be a little bit better to ride a bike on it, obviously, than it is today. Speeds are a little bit higher than desirable, but the volume isn't that large in terms of the roadway. But again, generally on-road accommodations when people are driving 50 miles an hour next to you is not a comfortable environment to ride a bicycle on, even though you can based on the width. It's not desirable.
Something that was just told me for 1 second, if you don't mind, because it's top of my mind. There was some confusion about how far those sidewalks are going to go with the 140 thing.
Yeah,
How far are they going to go?
exactly where it's shown.
And that's at the end of the project. The sidewalk is not going to make it. At the end of the 140 project, the sidewalks is going to stop at Brook.
Yeah, I haven't finished that. So that was a question that arose at the last meeting on one of the site plans that the applicant showed. It showed sidewalk extending beyond what you see here to the project. And it was indicated to me that that information was taken from DOT information. I just couldn't, Jeff, I don't know if you have an opinion. I haven't been able to find where the DOT shows that extension. It's definitely not within the TIP project because the TIP shows, as you've reviewed and
That's a critical point.
that is end of project, like you said, for the TIP project. If DOT has future plans that they have not, that maybe they've shared on their portals, I don't know where it is.
I'll take that as homework to go back and see. And if I can find the plans, I'll forward them to the
Yeah, I
town.
mean, that'd be wonderful. I think a lot of people like that.
I think it's extremely important for everyone. I mean, I walked that block. I would not want to. I mean, I felt like I took my life in hands walking on 140, and it was not safe. It was not in any way, shape, or form safe. These are 3-bedroom apartments. That means kids. That means moms with strollers trying to walk down to that park down at the library. And if there's not a sidewalk on 140, which these guys don't own and control, then that means we have to do other things. So it's a very important.
Yes.
I think safety is extremely. So I'm sorry for the interruption, but I had to have that answer.
No, it's perfect to add that as we're going through that.
When, after he's done presenting, see, as chairman, I get to violate that rule. And I don't usually take advantage of being chairman, but we will absolutely, I guarantee you, everyone gets a chance to speak at these meetings. Sorry.
Oh, no, not at all. Other thing in terms of alternative modes of transportation is public transportation, which I know the board knows there's no public transportation in this area. However, the town does have their, to the extent there's seniors or others that are eligible to use the Council on Aging shuttle, that's available also. As we talk about later on in the presentation about what we're terming our transportation demand management program, one of the important things in looking at this is, attached homes with a homeowners association or a management association is just making sure the residents are aware of the fact that the town has resources that are available for their use, including the Council on Aging shuttle that can provide those services to them. So although there isn't direct public transportation today, there are, these opportunities, and we just want to make sure the residents are aware of it. Next slide. Thank you. So this slide here shows the traffic characteristics of the project. So I mentioned those numbers just very briefly at the beginning. So at 27 attached units, we're expecting the project, and I'm going to highlight or focus on the highlighted section of the table here. So the number at the top of 178, that's the daily traffic volume. So if you counted all the vehicles going in or out of the property over 24 hours, we're predicting would produce 178 vehicle trips. So that's the number that would get added to the 5,775 vehicles that are out on Route 140 now. So if you wanted to look at a percent increase, That's the number gets added to the 5,775. The next two numbers are the morning peak hour and the evening peak hour numbers, and I've shown in the box below the table, these are the actual roadway peak hours. So Route 140 has a peak hour in the morning that occurs between 7 and 8. There's about 625 vehicles on that roadway that occur between 7 and 8 in the morning. And we're going to add 13 vehicles to the 625 vehicles over that time period. The peak hour in the evening occurs between 4:30 and 5:30 p.m. The project will add 14 vehicles to that volume of traffic, which today is about 730 vehicles. We're going to add to that volume of traffic. And I know, a very important question the board asked in one of the previous hearings that I was here before was, if you have 27 units, how come you only have 13 or 14 vehicles on those peak hours? It doesn't make any sense because what's going on. And we provided to the board kind of indicating these peak hours. So if I graphed the 178 vehicles that are going to occur over the day, what you see is it goes up and peaks to 7 to 8, and then it's going to come back down. It has a little peak in the afternoon, goes back down, and then it peaks again 4:30 to 5:30, and then comes back down. And the important thing in looking at that is it's really the traffic is dispersed, but it's going to peak between 7 and 8, and at 7 and 8, let's say it's 13 vehicles. If I slid that scale and said, okay, well, what's the volume from 7:30 to 8:30? It could be 12, but it's not 13. And that's the point that's being made. As you look at that curve, it doesn't fall off a cliff and go to 0 all of a sudden. So the traffic is spread out during those time periods. And so that's why it's really not everyone leaves in that 1 hour period. Some people leave before, some people leave after. And that's why the numbers during those peak time periods are not 27, which represents the number of units. The other thing I also like to point out is these numbers are based on current standards or statistics, which the most recent update was published in August of last year. So as we're looking at these numbers, a question that's always asked is, what about Amazon, FedEx, UPS, Uber, DoorDash? What about those vehicles? Are those in these numbers? And they are. So these are based on modern industry standards that include all modes of transportation that would serve a residential project. So those numbers are all built into these.
I have a question, Mr. Chair. Thank you for, because that question comes up all the time, and I don't think I've ever heard that explanation. So thank you. Are those trip generations, FedEx, Amazon especially, obviously, is always the big concern. Are those wrapped into the ITE standards so that gets applied? Okay.
Yeah. So the way, it's a scientific process we use to develop these numbers, but the way they're actually produced and we and probably your peer reviewer as well, we provide the data to the Institute of Transportation Engineers. The way the data what we actually do is we collect data. So if we build this project and let's say the board put a traffic monitoring condition, so we want you to go back out after it's occupied and count the number of vehicles going in and out. That data gets provided to the Institute of Transportation Engineers, and then they put it into their database, and that's what they use to update it. So the most recent update that they did was incorporate all of that new information. The other thing they did was they purged all the old information. So a lot of the numbers that were skewing some of the data with respect to the COVID impacts and things like that has been removed from the data set so that we're looking at kind of current industry trends in those numbers. So once we've estimated the amount of trips that are going to be produced, we need to assign it out onto the roadway network and through the intersections that we studied. And that's what this slide here shows. And so what you see here is about, we've got 85% of the trips are oriented to and from the northwest of the project site, 45% on Elm Street, 40% continuing northwest on Route 140, and then a lesser amount, 15% to and from the southeast. Now, the way these numbers are developed is there's two things that we use. The first is US Census data. So you report, I live in the town of Upton. You also report where you work. And so we can use that information and say, okay, if these will be residents of the town, and looking at the statistics for residents of the town, we know where generally the people in the town work. So then we can look at from this property, how do you get to those employment areas? So that's the first thing that we look at. The next thing we look at is the actual traffic counts. And so what the actual traffic counts allow us to do is take it into more of a localized distribution where you know, you would know during specific time periods, that road is just so busy, I'm not driving on it. I'm going to use another way, let's say, to get to, you know, Boston or get over to, you know, 495. Those types of local deviations in traffic will show up in our counts. So we can start with the US Census data and then look at the actual traffic counts and see how people are using the roadway network. And, you know, that results in what you see here on the slide. So in terms of the distribution of the traffic. Also, we term this slide as trip dispersal. And one of the reasons for that is that the traffic is concentrated at the driveway. So we have 13 vehicles going in and out during the morning and 14 vehicles in the evening. Now that occurs right at the driveway, and then some of it turns right, some of it turns left. And so as it gets away from the project site, those numbers, the 13 and the 14, they get smaller and smaller the further away from the site that you go. And so that's why, as I talked about, increases in delay and increases in vehicle queuing, you know, we really not starting with a large number at the driveway, but when we get away from the driveway, the numbers are smaller than even those of 13 and 14. So the trips get dispersed. And so we didn't see any significant impact of the project. Next slide. So as we've undertaken the analysis, looked at kind of the existing conditions and the impacts of the project, we have a series of recommendations as they relate to both internal, the design of the project site itself, and then looking external from the property. So the first set of recommendations are the site access recommendations. These are things that you sitting as a board would expect on a good site plan. So site plans that come before you, you would expect all of these things to be here. We provide these to our client before they issue the site plan set, so that ourselves and the site engineer are making sure that the plans reflect kind of what we have as recommendations. So they've taken these and added these onto the site plan. So the driveway being a minimum of 24 feet in width, that's going to be the DOT requirement as well as it relates to the driveway. Obviously a fire truck or an emergency vehicle have to be able to get into the driveway. A comment as it relates to the site plan, and this you'll see in a subsequent revision, I think that'll be presented to you. One of the comments from your peer reviewer, and this is actually in the fire code as well. So when the fire truck is entering the project site, it can use the full driveway width. So if it needs to use the full width to come in, it can do that. It can be, you know, cross the center line, probably is a better way to look at that. The reason why that's allowed is because if you tried to keep the fire truck on the correct side of the center line, the driveway would be so wide, or the corner radius would be so large it couldn't fit along the frontage of the property. So that's allowed. What's not allowed, unless the fire chief says that they're okay, is the vehicle as it's entering or exiting, it needs to stay on the correct side of the center line of Route 140. So if you picture, if the fire truck is coming in from the town hall side, needs to make a right-hand turn, it can't swing. It's not supposed to swing wide across the center line to get into the driveway. It has to stay on the proper side of the center line. And so there will be some refinements to the driveway, probably the corner radii, so that the truck is not crossing the center line. So that's one of the revisions that you'll see in the plan. So it can use the full width of the driveway, entering and exiting, but it can't cross the center line in 140, entering or exiting. So there'll be some changes. Really, all that needs to happen is the corner radii need to get a little bit larger to keep the vehicle from doing that. Secondary access. So we know that the plans had a secondary access onto Brook Street, again, subject to the fire chief saying that that's something that's desirable to them. If that's provided, we've just said it needs to be secured by means of a gate, and the fire chief would define that.
We met him at
Okay.
when he was down there at the site. That was one of the recommendations that we received at that time at the site visit.
So all we would suggest is that, you know, again, the fire chief is the one who has authority. Generally, 20 feet is the minimum for the fire code. The fire chief can say, listen, 12 feet is fine for me. They'll define kind of what is comfortable for them, and then the way that they want it secured. Some are fine with a Knox box on a gate. Others want other types of devices, but that's really.
We'll leave that to the fire
Yeah.
chief. Has he responded?
I have, other than initial conversations or responses, there's nothing additional.
Because we're probably gonna want something official,
Sure.
on what he wants.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have recommendations for any time that you have perpendicular parking, you want at least 23 feet behind the parking space. So if within the site, if it's 24-foot wide drives, that's fine. That 23-foot dimension is really required to allow for maneuvering in and out of parking spaces, because if generally, when you think about a large pickup truck or something, a 19-foot long vehicle, which is the longest vehicle that's generally in the fleet. So if you have a 19-foot vehicle in a 19 or 20-foot wide parking space and they back up, they need at least 19 feet to get just backed up. They need a little bit more room to cut the wheel and make the turn. So that's where that dimension comes from. Stop sign control for exiting the property, signs of pavement markings to meet industry standards. These are generally things that are notes on the site plan or should be there. Sidewalks we talked about. So today, as far as we know, there's not going to be a sidewalk along Route 140 where the frontage of the property is now to the point of what we talked about with school buses. Within the project site, we still want sidewalks within the site to go out to Route 140. So if there's a future sidewalk, we can connect to it, but it's also, unless the school department says otherwise, the school bus is not coming into the property. It will pick up out on Route 140. And so we need an area for the children to walk. And then we generally say a widened sidewalk at 140. So there's a place for them to stand. Got, bunch of kids out there. We want a little bit more room for them to stand on the sidewalk. So that's the recommendation. I think that's what's shown in the site plan.
Kids.
Mark crosswalks within the project site, if there are any. We need to have we need to have wheelchair ramps. The site triangle areas, you can go to this. Yeah, this will show the site triangle. So this plan here shows the site triangle area. So our recommendations as it relates to the site triangle are within the areas that you see that are shown in orange. That's actually the areas of the site triangle that are not within the roadway. So those are the areas where if there's vegetation, if there's landscaping, if there's signs, they need to be designed in such a manner that they're not going to obscure the sight line. So trimming of vegetation, making sure that if there is any landscaping, which, in this case, the state's not going to allow landscaping in the right of way. They'll allow for vegetation maintenance, but they won't allow you to plant anything unless you sign a maintenance agreement with them to keep it in perpetuity. But generally, they don't want anything in their right of way, but they will allow some vegetation maintenance for sight lines here. So I don't think we need to worry about signs or landscaping because it just won't be allowed. They won't issue a permit for it. It is important, and your peer reviewer recommended this as well. This needs to be shown on the site plan because it allows at the appropriate time, the zoning enforcement officer can go out and say something's not supposed to be there and get it out of there. It says it on the site plan. So this has been added to the site plan itself. You can see those site triangle areas, which I had said is 425 foot minimum. So you can see that we've achieved that either within the right of way or within the paved area along Route 140. Lastly, as it relates to those orange areas, there's no snow piles. So anytime we always recommend, and this actually shows up as a note on the plan, the snow piles that can't exceed 3.5 feet in height. If they get to a point of 3.5 feet in height, they need to be cut down or removed. And so that again will be a note on the plan. I think the last slide is just our transportation demand management measures. These would be a little bit more robust if we did have public transportation services, but the intent here is really making sure that the residents are aware of opportunities for use of public transportation. And this may be external to the town, but that looks at more of a regional impact as to where the commuter rail stations, what's the closest commuter rail station and things like that, just providing that information, the COA shuttle. And then lastly is bicycle parking, just making sure that we've got bicycle parking for residents, either exterior as well as we're designing the site, making sure that we've got accommodations within the buildings themselves. So that's the last slide I have. As I said, we did have the benefit of having the peer review, which did go through each of the items I discussed here tonight, some cleanup items on the site plans. But I'd be happy to answer any questions you have now or after you hear from your reviewer.
I'm assuming I know the sidewalk. You guys, we expect the sidewalk to be in on the property, on the front of the property on 140, going towards the center of town. And we've had neighbors express that they would like that sidewalk to also go towards Milford as far as the property. I'm assuming you're planning to do that.
Sorry, say it again.
We've had a neighbor on Milford Street express that we're hoping eventually to get sidewalks the whole way.
Yeah, we would do it our frontage.
Your frontage.
Yeah, our frontage.
That's what I want to hear.
Yeah,
Because if we can get the whole kit and caboodle eventually
yeah.
to be done, that would be appropriate.
And I think what I'd like to do, just know exactly what MassDOT plans on doing, is I'm talking to MassDOT right now on other projects, so if I send them an email for the district, I email the district to be like, just so we're all clear, like, here's our list, like, here's our piece of land, are you guys planning on doing sidewalks? If they're not, we have no problem kind of doing the frontage for this.
It also does help the sight lines having a sidewalk.
Yes, yeah.
Especially on that type of corner. I think the tip project is gonna change the end of Brook a little bit to make that a little better.
Yeah,
I
I
believe
think
that,
they're gonna angle it so it's more of a 90-degree angle.
yeah,
And
the
probably
sight lines there are terrible right now. That's not your circus, not your monkey, but that's one that we got to try to make sure that all the pieces eventually are there. Oh, you folks are super kind for coming. You don't actually have to stay for the whole meeting. We won't be upset if you take off.
We're just nerding out.
Oh. Well, welcome, sir. Welcome to the both of you then.
There are currently no vacancies though.
Yeah.
Place to do it.
I don't know, Jesus.
How do you think we're on here?
Yeah. No, it actually is really interesting because we've been spending a lot of time in Upton trying to plan what does that end of the town look like? It got rezoned a few years ago. Last meeting, we approved a variance for one side style roof where the brewery, next to the brewery, that's gonna be a really neat building eventually. So you make a plan and then it takes like 10 years to get there. This is, if we can get some sidewalks though, that I think sidewalks are critical. Okay. I want to open it to you guys. You're the most important.
Thank you. So in all of this discussion of hazards, this isn't to actually affect the traffic volumes and take your numbers, but nobody has mentioned, even if only dismiss it, the gas station. So the Imperial gas station's easterly exit is almost across the street from their exit. And not that many cars stop for gas compared to the volumes there, but I can see some conflicts possibly occurring, 2 left turns, coming down Prospect Street, having to angle your neck to look down there, and then a car coming out of gas station. Do you have any concerns about additional collision issues with mixed attention spans and such like that? I've come out of that gas station and having trouble assessing the traffic, even as it is. Looking across the street would be an additional piece of brain. Did you look at that?
So generally what we look at is what we call as interlocking left turns.
Yep.
So I think the offset, because of where our left turns going to happen to go into the property versus where the left turns would happen if they're going into the gas station driveway that's closest to us, those paths don't cross each other. So that's one of the things that we generally look at. The critical thing for the exiting movements so a left turn coming out of ours and a left turn coming out of their driveway is that they can see each other.
Yeah.
And so we've got good sight lines across the road. The other thing is that they're both exiting from a stop. So they're going slow. So that helps as well. So we do look at that, and really what we make sure of is on Route 140, we don't want a situation where the turns actually cross each other when they're not lined up. So that doesn't happen. And then for the exiting movements, they are offset enough, and because they're under stop control, that the slight offset that's there doesn't create a safety issue, as long as they can see each other.
I'm glad you've looked at it and thought it through, which it had been written down. I wouldn't have had to say anything.
No.
The other little thing, a very tiny thing, a neighbor said last time that they have their mailbox right just to the west of their entrance there. And do you see any hazard there, visibility? Mail trucks stopping there once a day probably doesn't matter so much, but does that have any impact on your consideration?
And so it shouldn't. And the reason is because, like you said, it's just they pop the mail in the box and then they move on. So it's periodic and sporadic in terms of how it would happen. If it were something where there's going to be a vehicle parked there, then it would be a different situation.
Okay, that's just a little thing. And Mr. Chairman, you mentioned the Brook Street exit. Is that going to come up again? Was that?
Yeah, we need an absolute final determination on where that sidewalk on 140 is going to end.
Well, not just as a way of getting around on the sidewalk, but also if people are going to use it for walking, is it ADA accessible? Questions like that, which are really traffic, but
no, it's an absolutely appropriate thing to bring up. if the sidewalk is ending at Brook Street, I have very strong opinions.
I'm
that-
sorry. Brook Street exit from the development back.
Right, right. Well,
Yes.
so my thought is if the sidewalk ends at the end of Brook Street, where Brook Street hits 140,
Mhm.
if that's the end of the sidewalk, what is the safest way for people to walk to get to that point? Because where the community center is, you've got 3-bedroom apartments. That means kids.
Yeah.
And you're gonna have mothers with strollers. Is it safer to send them out the back to walk down Brook Street to get to the end of the sidewalk, or is it safer to send them down 140?
Yeah.
I
thought
did that walk
Yeah.
to see, and I have very strong opinions about what is the safest path, and it is not 140.
Yeah, so then the question arises of it being, first of all, smooth and not a trip, and second, ADA accessible.
We have the opportunity to require the developer to make it something that is safe. I call it stroller safe,
Yeah.
80. Absolutely, I agree, that's a valid concern. I think it's something, once we have a final delineation, it makes an easier decision. But yes, absolutely. That would be something that we would have complete control over adding in. I know from the discussion with the current fire chief that it was discussed to have a gated path that he could get in from the back.
Yeah.
And I don't see why it couldn't just be a path for him to get in with whatever width he wants. With a little paved area around that gate so that you could have a stroller, you could have a wheelchair or whatever. With the popularity of the community center, which is just amazing how busy that community center is.
Yeah.
People are gonna want to walk. to
Oh,
it.
absolutely, yeah.
And I want them to be able to walk there safely. I'm not gonna throw, well, I don't have that right. You guys as a board have the right to make that. Okay, but I haven't, that's my opinion.
I'm absolutely no corner there. As,
Okay,
as
but-
somebody who contributed to.
Right, but you guys make that decision. That's just I walked it. I would recommend all of you walk that block. And just see what it's like walking on 140 right now.
This came up in the last meeting too,
It did, but we weren't, and it's coming up today. We're still not sure where that sidewalk ends.
or a sidewalk out the back.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm sorry, just for clarification, we're certain the sidewalk ends at Brook Street within that
Currently.
current TIP project.
Right.
Because what the unknown is if DOT has other plans that show extending it. So it certainly won't happen.
It's gotta
The
be,
You know
tip.
what I mean? So.
So it may not happen for several
Like,
years.
Yeah.
right, right.
So in any case, can we make a put a pin in that and add it to the conditions when we
Yes,
eventually?
I would say absolutely.
Just one question, has the fire responded? I know last 40B, they gave a letter, kind of, maybe.
That's what I just asked Mike to get from
Yeah.
the fire department, because we want that in writing from the chief.
And I believe he came in person, like.
He
last
did,
time,
he
too,
did.
so It could be an option to kind of weigh in, but I think maybe like this question, we'll go back, I'm gonna ask MassDOT, we'll check with the town, get a very definitive answer on the sidewalk on 140 where it ends. Then like we can kind of discuss the site plan and everything.
Absolutely. And in all honesty, it's a small detail that can get added in pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I'm well aware and understanding that it is not something that's popular with the neighbors, and I respect that. But I think we as a group have been, I don't know if you guys have gone to the planning sessions for West Upton and for this part of Upton. And something that's been brought up time and time again is walkable Upton, walkable. And I want people to be safe. And I'm going to make a plea to you guys that that's something you consider when we make a list of conditions. Mike's actually making a list of conditions as you guys suggest things, and we all kind of nod our head and said, yes, it should be that way. Mike is going to add that to a list of conditions because he's going to be the one writing this final document. So you get to choose whether that's a condition at the end. But it's not car traffic, but it is, we think of it all as foot traffic is the same thing.
Can I just add to that, Mr. Henderson last month, I did see, watch the recording, expressed some serious reservations
Yes,
about using that
yes.
road as a thoroughfare, so we should include him.
He's right there. And I actually got up and made sure to talk to him, to tell him, to give him a warning. I was honest with him. I told him that if that sidewalk isn't there, then I was honest. I think it's a public safety issue on getting people safely to the community center.
Sorry about
And
that.
he's not happy with me, and I understand that, but I respect the gentleman. He's served this town well for 20, how many years as fire chief?
100.
He said 40 in the department.
40 years in the department. Huh? You will absolutely have the right to do that, sir. Absolutely. And she was gonna be first though. I want to hear, are you done? Because I want to hear questions from the board, and then I want to hear from Stan Tech. But
That's what I was gonna ask when you were gonna go to
Okay.
peer review. So.
Are you all set, sir?
So thank you.
So
I
I'm
appreciate
gonna
it.
open it to the board, because I think.
I'm done.
Question or thought of this thing as it expands, because it's not all of the building that's this building, that whole area is becoming more, advanced. Is there some portion where the town becomes responsible, because you've got the gas station, the homes, the center of town, for crosswalks, light in the center, crosswalk, there might be an option so that it doesn't have to come out in the back of Brook Street, it becomes a lighted crosswalk going across Brook Street down 140. And as a thought, like, who would decide where would money come? Is that the town, Route 140? Is that something we can research a little? So give everyone
Because it's a state
and
road.
not,
Yeah.
Because it's a state road, the town doesn't have much.
but
authority.
if you cross Brook Street, it wouldn't be a state road crossing there. You would have a crosswalk across Brook Street to get
Oh, I
from
see what you're
from
saying.
that side to that side, not being on the highway side. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
So,
Could we go to the one, the state and say, hey, what does it take and what does it cost? Just so
Yeah.
that the whole area is gonna be more developed, is it all your responsibility? And if you're gonna have that future development up the hill with all that traffic and people,
Absolutely.
it should be something we should wholeheartedly look at as just an improvement for that section of town. Cause you got, not only that, but you have the hill both directions, and you cross that hill, because I often go that way, you can't really see anything there, especially under the traffic hours, until you kind of close your eyes, blink and go left before you get smashed. And you have people in strollers and young people and
Yeah.
teenagers to high school coming in and out. That's gonna be
It is.
a nightmare that's gonna be in addition to anything we add as one.
But we can control what happens on this property with this application. And as each property comes up, because there's been some sniffing around further than the property adjacent to this, we could also, as part of that discussion, hopefully get some sidewalk in there too. But for right now, we can only control this. I do know that as part of the TIP project, the termination of Brook Street is getting redesigned. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, I believe so. I'd have to
I
bring it up and
I've been in
double
those
check.
meetings.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure it's being realigned.
It's being realigned, and I think they're gonna try to get the sight lines improved, because there's that hill there that makes coming out of Brook Street dangerous.
The
And I,
75% design is posted on the town's website and the DPW. if you want to.
so absolutely, Bob, I agree with you that we fortunately, we have a town planner but it costs money.
Oh, yeah, no, I just didn't know what the process would be.
Yeah,
Chair,
go for it.
to Bob's point, I mean, I think those are things that can probably appropriately wrapped into a complete streets plan for the town. So whenever the town goes forward with creating a new complete streets plan, identifies these types of
Yeah.
projects to be included in that plan, so it's vetted through, the community. So it's not just this board giving that opinion, all the boards, the select board and the public has a chance to give an opinion on those sorts of improvements. I mean, I don't disagree with them at all, right? But I think that would be the first step, is to including that into a complete streets plan.
Yeah.
And then you use that in order to potentially get funding and then to justify to DOT that these are things that you want to do if it involves
Yeah, so everyone wants
street.
people to be able to walk from the high school to the country super, to the Bean safely. I think that was brought up time and time again. School Street has been brought up. The whole thing's done except for the last 100 yards. That should be done. What are they, Cross Street? Is that the name of that cross one? Yeah. From basically high to cross needs to get done. And there's a couple patches that are just missing. And it says this whole plan of walkable Upton. We've got to get that into the plan. Gentlemen, I'm not ignoring you. I want to make sure that each of you have any questions that you can give to this gentleman. Then I'd like to, once you do that, I'll go to Stan Tech, who is our peer review.
But-
You good?
Who's responsible for maintaining the shrubberies?
So if it's in the, so if it's the, anything that's within the state highway layout, it's going to be a condition of a permit that the state's going to issue to maintain the sightline. So that's going to come with the permit.
That's why they have to.
Yeah, and I think to the chair's point about the sidewalk, if there's a sidewalk, that makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
MassDOT, very often, they are complete streets requirements for the driveways, so I wouldn't be surprised if they don't require sidewalks, and your consultant can speak to this as well, that they will make sure that a shelf is provided for the future sidewalk. So it's often they will do that, which will force that vegetation to be pushed back. But, they may require a sidewalk to be built as a part of the project, knowing everything that the town said is desirable. But also, affordable housing at this location with those amenities just to the northwest of the site, they want that connection.
Yeah.
So I think even as the town is looking at grant opportunities, affordable housing at this location in proximity to the library and the community center is one of the things the state would look at and say, that's a no-brainer to fund sites.
Absolutely is. All right, so if you guys are all satisfied, we have a peer review from Stan Tech. I'm forgetting your first name.
There's one.
Dave, there you go. He's sort of the engineer that double checks his work. And then I'm going to open it up to the public. Okay, sir, what do you think of that presentation? You agree, disagree, right on the money? Where are you on this? You're up, right, guns.
Mr. Chairman, but I will defer to Evan, who is on the screen now. Evan is our senior traffic engineer. I'm sort of senior civil engineer, project manager, but I was here also because I want to get feedback from everybody and take notes for Evan. And I'll be back for the stone for the civil.
I really wanted to hear Dave
We'll
talk
decide
traffic.
by tonight. We do that. Evan, thank you very, very much for coming. What do you think? Do you want to give him a grade? Or what would did he miss anything? What do we need to know?
No, that's a great point. No, I appreciate Jeff's presentation again. So for those who don't know me, I'm Evan Drew. I'm a peer reviewer, traffic engineer with Stan Tech. Again, I really would have loved to see Dave Glenn's take on my traffic stuff, but yeah, he's lucky I'm here. No, so thanks for the time. I think Jeff's presentation went through pretty procedurally the process. It followed in the flow of their memo that we reviewed. Stan Tech prepared a memo in response to that. I'm not going to quote it verbatim because most of it is essentially what you saw in the presentation. So I did want to give some highlights into some more feedback. Again, the 27-unit townhouse residential development. Jeff pointed out the correct use of the ITE trip generation manual for daily and peak hour periods. I think Jeff also did a good job just now presenting that. How does 27 units equal this many cars? There is kind of some more charts, and if you live in a neighborhood, some people leave for work at 7 in the morning, some leave at 7:50, and just kind of it's more of a living, breathing thing rather than just everyone leaves at one time and they're all on the street at the same time. I appreciated that in the report that they collected traffic data, including speed, but then as it was potentially concurrent to the construction, decided to take that and add a bit of a conservative layer to their assessment in regards to the speeds that you see out there. As we've discussed earlier and Jeff presented, the speed is a major critical factor in sight distance evaluations. So if you have the higher speed, you have a need for a much longer sight distance, which again only benefits the town in that, and to give this use as much visibility as possible. I did want to kind of go a little off script here and appreciate that VAI presented the sight distance sight triangle. That was one of our recommendations, I'll say. And so it was great to see it. And it's not only great in context of if you're leaving that site and looking in both directions to leave. I think this mimics the board's comment earlier about, well, the gas station's a little tough to see out there and all that. Clearing the vegetation, optimizing site distance in this area, even just at the site, is of the benefit of everyone here. The sight lines go both ways. So I think that's an appreciated opportunity for the town in this location. One of the biggest questions about speeds and sight lines is the crash data. As Jeff identified, MassDOT has a very good crash system, crash GIS database, as well as continued evolving evaluations of high crash locations and crash rates. So in particular roadway types in certain regions around the state, there is a per million vehicle miles traveled, real fun engineering units of measure. So in this area, and I could confirm through MassDOT site, this area, as much as it sounds like there's some anecdotal evidence of the feeling of the roadway, which this does not discount that, it is actually a lower crash rate than other similar type of roadways in the area, which is of the benefit of the area. I wanted to also kind of note here, that's kind of come up tonight, the Amazon trucks and whatnot that came out in the middle of the day. That's been a common question for 40Bs, residential developments, mixed use developments all throughout the Commonwealth. What is a benefit here? It is a residential unit. Typically where heavy vehicles being present is of more emphasis in our traffic engineering reviews is the semis for commercial buildings and things like that. Federal highway kind of rates Amazon trucks and UPS trucks at a kind of a lower rate, right? They're still bigger than a passenger vehicle, but they're still kind of on the lighter truck side. If there was a bigger percentage of kind of semis in this kind of use, we would take that into a bigger account in terms of turning traffic, potential queues and delays with that, but it's residential, so it all seemed pretty above board there. I just wanted to see if there's any other notes here, but I think generally, to summarize Stantec's positions in our reviews of this, some of the items, as was discussed from Jeff's presentation, is we just noted a couple things that may have been missing from the appendix. As 40Bs are very public documentations, there's things that who sees this every day, knows where to look. There's some of these items such as like seasonal adjustments of the traffic volumes collected back in November that, we're missing from the appendix. So for a full complete traffic study, adding these items into the appendix. And as I kind of transitioned into how the traffic study was then translated into the traffic related items on the site plans, I noted some of the truck turning templates, and Jeff kind of touched on that about some of the overlap over some of the center lines of trucks turning into and out of the driveway onto Milford Street, as well as presenting the site triangle as was presented today. If that can be included in the site plans themselves, again, it's a visual that will help anyone inspecting it, and for all, it's going to also be needed most likely for the MassDOT process as well, as part of their submission for a driveway permit update. So I would say that other than a few appendix items, I think everything was very acceptable in the traffic study itself. Much of our comments were translating the recommendations in that into the final site plan. And it sounds like there's been some work moving on that as well. So that's great to hear that it's already being moved on. So.
I don't.
Yes, sir.
You go first.
No, go for it.
So if I understand correctly, 85% of the traffic will be turning left out of the property. I don't know if that means anything besides that people will be waiting on the property to turn, which is ideal. And then everybody coming in will have a right turn.
It works. So the low volume of traffic benefits that. So we don't have queuing on the driveway because it's not a large volume of traffic coming or going. If, to the point, I think what everyone was mentioning, if we had a higher volume or more trucks or things like that, that's where we would look at it and say, well, okay, well, do we need separate right and left turn lanes coming out? Do we need a left turn lane on 140? If the volumes get high enough, then we start to look at whether those type of things are needed. But because it's a, low volume trip generator, it works with the single lane in, single lane out, and we don't need turn lanes on 140.
I mean, I'm seeing this too, that it's a left turn with two merging roads and a gas station, and everybody's gonna be making that same turn. It's not like the feel of it is not, yeah.
If it was a higher traffic generator, if the density of the project were increased, we would start to look at how those interactions would occur. Because really looking at, what is the probability of those movements happening simultaneously? In this case, it's a low probability. So it's one of the things, even looking at the crash statistics, it's very unlikely that there's going to be that type of an interaction. But if it were a denser project with more traffic or a different type of traffic, then we would look at different designs as it relates to it.
That's my question is, it seems like a lot of the recommendations and questions is looking at that turning radius and people turning in while you have people waiting there to turn left coming out, and they're going to be coming into the right. And I would ask Stantec, is that radius coming in from the right the appropriate radius? Does it give them enough room that they can turn to the right without crossing that center line? And should we have something on the center line, like a rumble strip or something like that? Are you happy with the radius and the turn that they've got, or do we need to change that somehow?
Evan, you want to answer? I can.
Yeah, Evan, or you either?
I think Dave, if you could, I know you looked at the site plans a lot longer than me. I pointed out my concerns from the truck templates. Maybe it was the fire department, and I appreciate Jeff kind of adding some context, but I think there was some swinging going on that were pretty tight in that area from what I saw. I can't recall. I don't have it up in front of me. I don't know, Dave, if you might be able to speak to that a bit clearer than I will.
We are modifying them, so they are going to change because of that. For exactly what you said, it's not only for the passenger vehicles, tight of a turn, but it's really for the fire truck. That right turn in, again,
That's
right now they need to swing wide over the center line and then cut it back, and that can't happen.
Okay, so if you could get that radius so that it's safer coming in, because I don't want people being queued coming out and getting pegged.
We are adjusting that, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but these, those truck turning lanes are for the fire department's biggest engine that they have.
Yeah.
So a car would have a much kind of easier time, but it is being adjusted, so.
So you mentioned 19, I'm sorry.
No,
I was kind of interrupted.
No, I was finished, go ahead.
You mentioned 19 feet. Is that what you said for the length of fire truck?
No,
The largest, a passenger car vehicle, yes, is 19 feet.
Because my Tacoma is 20-something feet, right?
So,
Yeah.
the fire truck would be,
Yeah.
depending on the size, it'll be at least the size of a school bus, which would be 40 to 45 feet, and then
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah, the 19 feet is just how deep a regular parking spot is. Okay, no, I think these are all good.
Sometimes, right?
No, none of them are dumb questions. They're all excellent questions, Okay, any other questions from the board member? Because I know we've had, now you've been very patient. I'm gonna let you, since you were first to raise your hand, you want to ask whatever questions you want?
I live at 26 Lombard Street.
Yep.
So I'm at the bottom of the hill.
Yep.
I've been there for 30 years, so.
Yep.
Done some of my own traffic study, and you can't change that hill. So you did the study during construction, and I know I sat on the top of the hill. So nobody's coming down that hill at the speed that they typically do when there is construction. By the time even I get down to my house, I mean, people pass me, and then that rise where the crosswalk is at Brook and Elm. I mean, it's just.
The brook runs a
really
path.
dangerous. I mean, my kids never walked on that street, yeah. And as far as I know, they're taking some of my property to do some work. And there aren't gonna be sidewalks on my side. I do know that. I'm on the opposite side.
Yeah, they're on the other side,
So that's just.
no one can come down that hill at their normal speed right now. It's the worst road in town. That is awful.
Yeah, so when the paving's done, it's going to go back to, 50 miles an hour. So I'm thinking,
Yeah.
or more, at the bottom of that hill. I don't know if there's a way to get the speed reduced. The 30-mile-an-hour is right in front of my house. That's way too late because that crosswalk,
Yeah.
is right there. So I don't know if that's something that MassDOT, I was gonna ask because they're gonna be working right in front of them, doing some work in mine. So I don't know if
That's an excellent point, Joe, because
because you can't.
because who's, right, where does, so Mike, being that state road, where it turns into a 30, is that a state thing or is that a town thing?
I believe that's stage, Jeff.
It is. So the town, in order to lower the speed limit, the town can make a request to MassDOT. Or the town can undertake its own study. The easiest thing is you make a request to Boston headquarters, to MassDOT, to ask them to perform a speed study.
Once it's redone, so you get better data,
Correct.
I would be very happy to ask the board for that sort of recommendation to the town to say can you please ask the state? I would put it probably even before the beginning of this development. Just because I know where the gas station is and I forget the name of the road coming down there, but that's still the old fashioned merge at an angle, which they're trying to get rid of a lot of those. But that might be something, that's not something that this project can do, but we as a town board can request to the selectmen that they put that request into the
I
state.
think they're reconfiguring that Prospect and.
Prospect.
As well.
Yeah. Mike, are they reconfiguring Prospect?
No.
Long-term, I would bet that it would eventually get reconfigured because they're trying to eliminate, actually, Mr. Henderson?
It's being reconfigured because of the new.
Culvert.
Going in
Yeah.
there. They're reconfiguring Prospect Street.
Okay.
Okay. The mother
Because the
fault.
tip ends at Brooks and Prospect is past Brooks.
Thank you, sir.
So there's a new culvert that they're gonna try and
They're taking.
memo on it. Yeah. They want to come down and make a 90-degree turn and it doesn't work coming down that hill. So the fire chief got involved also. So they're gonna change that a little bit different than what.
That must be, is that outside of the tip? Sorry.
Yeah, it
No,
has to do with the new culvert they're putting in at
Right.
foot of the hill.
But, okay, so,
They need to do some land taking in that area to get more land for the culvert.
yeah. Oh, okay, so that's a part of the culvert plan, so.
Excellent. So many plans in this one spot, but when we get all said and done, as we get to the end of the project, if it's appropriate, we'll try to, as a board, see if we want to come to a decision to ask for that.
Yeah, one thing to look out for that is the methods for changing speed limit. There's a statute the town can opt into for a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. Or if you petition MassDOT, you usually have to give them 85th percentile data speed, which could bring the speed limit up.
Ooh, we didn't want that.
Then they could, and that's a good point because they
Yeah.
caution you. So MassDOT will do the speed study at no cost to the town. The select board just has to put the request into the state traffic engineer's office and they will go and do it. They do take into consideration, as you said, they do the 85th percentile and then they look at the adjacent land use, things like, so then they take these other factors into consideration as well. But they caution exactly what you said, which is be careful what you ask for.
Yeah,
I know multiple towns that have turned away from that path because they.
Because of that.
Yeah.
ouch, ouch. Okay, Mr. Henderson, you wish to speak?
Just, that's a 45-30 and I think what the issue is trying to slow the 45 down, coming downhill. That's, you know, they meet right there in Imperial and people don't slow down. Down at Brook Street, they want to change that to a 90-degree. I wrote a letter to Mass Highway. School bus will be crossing the line every time when they come out of Brook Street because of the angle the roadway is now. They need to leave that similar to what it is, just like they did Mechanic Street. They wanted to take Mechanic Street and try and make that 90-degree going in, and those things just don't work in those things. So the school bus would be going there. My question to the board is if, well, number one, I think the town needs to be involved, with the state. We're talking about 300 feet of sidewalk here. Will not only benefit the newer residents, but the residents that are on there now. So I think that they should pursue the state. You all know my feeling, with this. Next to my property, normally we have people will have 30 dogs a day coming out into that neighborhood and going everywhere. And I ask each one of you to come down and look at it and see what you would think if that happened to you. So it will wreck a neighborhood, there's no doubt. I wouldn't have selling going to be here 80 years. So I just know that there'd be a slew of people who die every week come through there. We have a quiet neighborhood now. Brook Street isn't that wide either, and we have a lot of traffic there. It's a narrow road. So I really want to get some push from the town to try and get that 300 feet of sidewalk. Now, is the second property going to be developed? Or are there any plans on that property this side?
Through the chair, I would venture guess that it will be developed, but I don't have any concrete plans. There's nothing submitted before any boards or anything.
Now it's got water and sewer. It's going to be developed a lot faster. The question is, will it be developed in time?
Yeah, it's not if.
This gentleman could add sidewalk and then we'd only have a 200-foot section of sidewalk.
Yeah, I mean, if it came before this board, my recommendation would be to have a sidewalk. Absolutely.
If they did put sidewalk in 140, would you still want access to Brook Street?
It becomes a lot less important. It really does. I mean, from a safety point.
It's up to
I want to
5
say
feet.
something too, if I can.
Yeah,
So-
absolutely.
I live on 24th Street.
Yep.
Right. I've been there a lot when he's traveled, when he's working with FEMA. And the telephone company and the electric company uses their sites going from one street to another. So when they see that 20-foot opening between Brook going through somebody's property and coming out on 140, they automatically think it's a throughway. During the snowstorm, I had someone come that barely spoke English, telling me after he destroyed the driveway, plowing through it, trying to get to 140, my driveway, not the 20-foot piece, my personal driveway.
Yeah.
He came down, he demolished a shrub at the end that's probably 15 years old.
Yeah.
He almost took out our camper. He basically told me to go get a shovel to shovel him out. He told me it was GPS that brought him there,
Yeah.
and I was beside myself going, you got to be kidding.
I happen to know because I have been pulled up, I don't know if it's Waze or Google.
Yep.
Actually has the driveway through this development as a real road.
Yep.
I think the current itineration from the fire, and if I misspeak, please tell me, is that if there is something back there, it would be gated and locked.
Yeah, and the biggest thing too is they go to drive around town there, they come around the corner. I literally caught a tractor trailer coming down Piccadilly at 5 o'clock in the morning, taking out the neighbor's stone wall that sits 4 feet high. Okay, coming down through there because they think it's a roadway.
Right.
And then they took our stone wall as well. So it's just.
Yeah,
there's
18
a lot
wheelers
of
don't
people that
belong in
love that street as it is now. And I can't tell you how many times I've asked certain people, please don't let your dog go to the bathroom on my plants that are sitting in a nice garden.
I think one of
So I
the,
guess my guidance.
I think one of the most important thing is I respect your concerns. The thing we're gonna wanna know is if there's not gonna be a sidewalk on 140 and we understand that we're gonna have to do something, that of the two evils going out Brook Street and 140 and you're gonna have people walking on it, what are the specific remediations that are on this property that we can get the developer to do to make it as less onerous to you as we can? So that's sort of the suggestion I really like is what can we do? If we have to do it, how can we make it the least onerous? Whether it be a 6-foot fence. I know that there's already going to be an earthen berm there with trees on top. What is it that can make it the least onerous as possible? So if you have specific suggestions on that, we're not there yet. We don't, I'm not 100% sure where this, I'm like 95% sure where this sidewalk is gonna end. But if you have specific suggestions on that, then I would be very willing to listen to that.
Will the town pursue the state on the TIP project or one of the projects and try and get money to extend that sidewalk?
I was, through the chair, while we were talking, I was thinking to myself how to accomplish that. And I just had a conversation with CMRPC about MBTA catalyst funds. Just to let you into my thinking, we obviously, we're all aware of the construction that's happening at Route 140. That's because of the extension of sewer and water. And my concern with the MBTA catalyst funds is that we don't have anything to spend it on because we're already doing the infrastructure that they would want to. But my conversation with CMRPC today was that it doesn't have to be necessarily that. I'm thinking to myself, sidewalk infrastructure. So maybe there's a way.
Maybe there's a way.
And there's certainly an argument with this project just outside the MBTA district, right? We're adjacent to the MBTA district here.
Yeah, and long term, I mean, if it's a long way up that hill.
Yeah.
But if you could, I mean, how many units are going in at Governor's Landing?
Right now it's 127.
You know, if you could, I mean, that would be awesome if you got 127 new units that have sidewalk all the way to the community center.
I mean, we'll see. I mean, that's just one idea. I don't know if it'll pan out, sort of thing, but
It's a long term, it's a longer term thing. This is a more immediate thing. Yes, sir.
CPU funds to use?
CPC funds?
I don't think so, but I can ask.
I think it's real, I looked into it and there's potential for that. And again, I don't think it's a lot of money to do that stretch. They're gonna take down the ledge between the VFW and Brook Street. That ledge is all gonna come down there, so you're gonna have sight distance to the left there. And I don't think they can take that out. It is all ledge right up. That road goes up like that for a reason. It's because we hit all ledge.
All ledge.
You find that out. So I'd like the town to pursue that with the DPW, with Mass Highway and just see if there's any CPU funds that might be able to.
I'll inquire with the chair. I'll inquire with the CPC chair.
Okay. Are there any people out in the Netherlands that have questions or concerns? I want to make sure we include everybody.
Yeah, if anybody's online that wants to speak, unmute yourself and.
Okay. I'm assuming we're set. Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, I didn't mean to cut you off. You go ahead. You were saying.
I was gonna say, I'm assuming we're all set on traffic for tonight. I know stormwater is something that I see the stormwater report.
I was gonna suggest, thinking about schedule.
That's what I want to talk about.
Yeah. And it sounds like, just to recap, our homework is, hopefully the fire department, we can get something in writing from them to weigh in, just, once and for all. And then we will do our best to figure out exactly what MassDOT is gonna do. But the next meeting, wouldn't probably make sense. It's kind of everything else in Stantec's purview, which is civil and stormwater. So we could kind of knock that out in hopefully in one meeting, and then we can issue an updated set of plans and then see, talk through anything in those two departments. And that's what we would suggest if you feel.
If you can get that entrance straightened out by that meeting, that'd be great.
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to open it to the board. Any question, comment, concerns with that plan? Or does that sound reasonable to all of you gentlemen? Okay. Any other business that we need to cover for this before we close this up, or not, we close it?
No, I've made a couple notes for myself to follow up on, but it's been mentioned. I just wanted to speak for the record that David Brooks submitted a Mullen certificate.
Thank you. Yes.
And so he's watched a video of the last meeting and has submitted the appropriate.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for coming. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for your review. Thank you for your comments and your concerns. Always know that, concerns are very important. Actionable solutions also is helpful to us, because we're not the only ones who have great ideas. Sometimes you guys have great ideas too. Okay. All right. So we're going to close. What's the right term? Continue this to the next meeting. That's the right term.
Yeah.
Yeah, continue this to the next meeting, which will do all the engineering stuff. Hopefully Stan Tech, you won't have to drag you to 5 meetings, you know. But I know, I already saw the stormwater report in there, and I'm assuming that takes into the account for the new culvert system that they're doing down there.
That's in the road.
That's in the road, it doesn't affect that, okay. I just keep hearing about this culvert thing, but I never saw a presentation on it, so I don't know what the scope of it is. All right, thank you all very, very much. All right, for us, we have some minutes to approve.
Just have the March ones.
I saw that in here.
So I'll get them to them on screen.
Okay, this is the March 18th. I had read through it really quickly. I didn't see anything that was a concern. I'm very glad I did, because he had calmed down a lot by the time we got to him.
Well, didn't Michael not get to vote on the first vote?
He was under.
Oh, and he didn't have it. Okay, fine.
I'm actually still confused on what the issue is and where.
They don't want people walking on Brook Street.
Is there even a sidewalk on Brook Street?
No, but it's a very quiet, small street. It's a nice neighborhood.
Yeah.
It's a very nice neighborhood.
I mean, how much foot traffic is there?
You just continue the public hearing.
Oh,
Sorry.
Sorry, yeah, we got to discontinue it. Sorry. Yeah, we'll have we'll write all these things down and discuss them.
Yeah, well,
we do got to follow the rules really carefully.
Sorry.
I know I wasn't here, but Michael voted on everything but the first motion. Because you kept pointing to the wrong direction. Right?
Yeah, there was some confusion because weren't you, Mike, you were remote.
Yeah, I voted on all of these.
Yeah.
Except the first.
It's only included enough.
Just trying to prove that I watched it.
There you go. Okay. Well, you have done that, sir. Yeah, the audio was a real problem. I think that was, yeah, he had said that the audio was a problem and a half. Anyone want to make a motion on this? You're not finished reading it
I
yet.
moved to approve the minutes for December 17th, 2025 and March 18th, 2026.
As amended.
As amended.
March, right?
Just March.
Just Mark.
Just,
As amended.
yeah, but just the March one
Just
right
the
now.
March one.
Yeah. Okay. Second. Okay.
Aye.
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 Both views aye.
There we go. I get confused with this whole, we used to be 3, so it's so like, oh my God, we have our clue now.
I'm still learning to proceed.
Anyways.
The Mullin thing wasn't clear whether the vote.
Oh, yeah.
I even checked with
GL.
GL.
Need to sleep, but.
Oh, yeah.
Robert signals on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Follow.
Yeah.
It's up to the chair. Per town council, it's up to the chair how they want to conduct the meeting. I mean, some boards will like officially adopt Robert's rules or democratic rules, but it's up to the chair to how they want to run the meeting.
Yeah, I'll look at this.
If you had this.
And the other thing is open meeting law, once you move an item, continue it, postpone it, but otherwise you've stopped talking about it for that agenda item. There's no more discussion to be had past that official vote to continue or postpone.
The only one rule that's a real good safeguard is with this size board, if any more than 2 of us are ever together.
3.
We
Well,
can't
more.
talk about it. More than 2.
Yeah,
We
more.
can never talk about it. If it's 2 of us, right, if it's 2 of us, we could talk about something.
Can't skirt the rule of having to talk about it.
Yeah,
Having
and
somebody
there's
pass it
no,
along.
and there's
Yeah.
no doing it by like an email thing around too. You can't
Yeah.
do that either. The next time one of the trainings come up, I'd be absolutely glad to ride with you guys, go with you for the training. I can always use a refresher myself and I'll buy you lunch.
Oh,
So how's that for a deal?
Which you offered me.
that's Tim.
Join.
Did you go
It
to,
hasn't come up.
it generally comes up July, June?
I forget. I send it around when I get the
When he
notice.
gets it, but I I'll even buy 2 lunches,
Thank you.
because I,
Whenever we sit down like this, I just think, is our company since I'm history, you know, the fools, put it on the.
Yeah. no,
That and.
I'll just say that fortunately between Mike and Eric,
Oh,
it's-
2024.
It is.
I don't remember that. That was, I think, the one.
They don't.
Oh, that is, yeah.
Yeah, posted and they make it a
In that case, it's then, yeah, because I think-
Upton zoning board violated.
yeah.
If it's 2024.
Mike, I want to give you a compliment. I love the fact that you can go on the website and find
I
everything,
got a picture, it's not good.
you know, and the fact that all those documents are there.
It's a prince-
I'm sitting next to him, he's like, where the fuck's he getting that? I'm like, wait a second, he must be on the town website. Sure enough, it's on the website.
Mr. Chair, do you want to adjourn?
Yes, Bob, give me a motion to adjourn, please.
I would like to make a motion.
Last.
Adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.